Baseball in 1850 was a very different game from what it is today. And at Westville, we play by 1859 rules, which was when the New York Knickerbockers, which was one of the original baseball teams, began to form rules that we would recognize today. In that era, baseball was a very important part of the social life in a small town. People would come from miles around to see a game. They would come in their Sunday best. And before the game, there'd be a parade with a brass band, and they would parade up the street and into the park, and everybody would sit around the field. We're standing in the middle of the Westville field. And a field in a small town like this would have been just any place that they could find with some open area in it. It wouldn't have been marked off. It wouldn't have had bleachers or any of those things. Just some open area. And in this case, we've got trees and we've got gullies, and that's all part. Here you can see first base, which is just a croaker sack filled with sand. And the bases are spaced about 60 feet apart on the corners, and that's pretty much what you're used to. Here's a tree almost in the line of running from home to first. This is about where the pitcher would stand. There'll be a line drawn across, and the rule is that he will not be able to cross that line. He must pitch underhanded. The ball that we use in 1859 is very similar to a baseball, except it's softer than a softball. It's hand wound, so it never can be as tight as the balls that they use today. The pitcher is required to pitch underhanded to the batter. And by rule, he must pitch where the batter wants. This is second base. This is third base here. This is home plate. This is where the batter stood to hit the ball. The umpire stood to the side, somewhere between home plate and first base. He was the only umpire, and his rule was law. Whatever he said could not be argued, and any player who was unruly or cursed or got in a fight with the umpire could be fined 25 cents. And most players carried change in their pockets for that reason. The tally keeper was to this side. Whenever a player scored, crossed home plate, his run did not count until he went to the tally keeper and said, "Tally me, sir." The tally keeper would then ring a bell, and his run would be counted. The umpire who stands to the side does not call balls and strikes. The only strikes are those strikes in which the batter misses the ball. There are no balls called either, unless the pitcher refuses to throw the ball where the batter asks, and the umpire rules eventually that he's trying to delay the game, in which case he can call a ball and he can fine the pitcher. The other fielders all are in the normal positions that most people are used to in baseball. The exception to the normal rules in ball is that the fielders must stand on the bag. The first, second, third baseman all have to stand on the bag until the ball is struck. The outfielders must stand in the center of their fields and not move until the ball is struck. The shortstop is the only player allowed to move, and he can play anywhere he wants to and move whenever he pleases. The game itself is interesting because when you hit the ball, it can go in a tree or bounce off a tree or even bounce off a spectator. And as long as it lands in bounds, it's in play. And if the fielder catches it on the first bounce, he's out. I show the pitcher where I want the ball. He must deliver it to that place so I don't have to swing. That ball was caught on the first bounce, and so it would have been an out.
Bring them out and put them on the hob. However many skillets of biscuit you have, you put a bed of coals on the hob. Cut some lemons and stir it until it tastes good. Am I cutting too fast?
Elsewhere in the program, we've been talking about how the mules are used in a variety of ways. For example, there's the pottery pug mill and the cotton gin and the baling press. They have a job even after those jobs are over, and that is in late October or early November. They are moved down here to the cane mill. Cane is a crop that matures generally after cotton does, so it is harvested and brought to this mill, and then the mill grinds the cane, makes juice. Juice is cooked down into syrup. Every year or so, we have to replace this pole because it stays out in the weather all year. It's a persimmon tree that is cut to provide the leverage to the animal that we tie to the mill. Basically, the pole extends on out, and the mule will be tied here, and when he's hooked up, he'll go around the mill, around and around and around. Cane is fed into the mill, and then juice comes out this side. Then the juice is caught in a pan about 10 or 15 gallons at a time and carried over to the kiln where it's cooked down into syrup. The different kettles are different sizes, and we generally cook about 40 gallons of juice down into about 5 gallons of syrup. Right now, what I'd like to do is to walk over to the kettle and show you how that works. The juice is brought to here and poured in this kettle. There's a fire that's put in the back of the kettle. You can see the chimney there where the smoke is taken out. The juice is warmed up, and as it's warming up to a boiling temperature, there's somebody that has to tend to it all the time. What he does is to skim the pulp and the trash that might have gotten in the juice, and he skims it and skims it and skims it. It just has to go on, and it's a process that takes 3 or 4 hours to do. Those skimmings are poured into a barrel, and the skimmings, after the syrup is made, the skimmings have their own purpose. They can be fermented and used for what's called stump juice. Stump juice is called that in modern times because during Prohibition it was illegal to sell alcohol, what somebody would do is put a bottle of stump juice on a stump in the woods and go away, and somehow magically when they came back an hour later there'd be no stump juice left, but there would be some money. So that's what that is used for. At any rate, as the juices cook down, it becomes thicker and thicker, and this is where the real skill comes in. There are a lot of people that make syrup, not a lot of them that make it well. Knowing exactly when to pull the fire out and remove the syrup out of the kettle is the real skill. If you don't cook it enough, the juice will become rancid in the jar and won't be any good. If you cook it too long, it turns to sugar. The very best people that make cane syrup make a clear, thick, dark amber material that is a wonderful addition to any meal. And I guess my childhood memories are filled with eating biscuits and syrup. I've grown up with it, and I've enjoyed it all my life.
This is the dry corn that you can take and make hominy grits. Very, very good.
Every antebellum farm had a number of outbuildings, and this is one that is a typical outbuilding for a farm. This is the still house at the farmhouse at Westville that we've already talked about. We've talked about using corn for making hominy. We've talked about grinding sugar cane to get the juice for making syrup. Here is yet another use for corn and sugar. This is where liquor is made. And in the 1920s, of course, Prohibition, which was a constitutional mandate that it was illegal to make alcohol, that changed a lot of how alcohol was made. Prior to Prohibition, back in the 1850s, for example, many people made it. Most people made it. Either if they didn't make it, they bought it at the store, and they would buy it in everything from the smallest container to huge barrels. We've seen inventories where they bought just 10, 15 barrels at a time to carry to the farm, or somebody would buy from one of their neighbors. Alcohol was a major part of the lives of people that lived in 1850. This is a corn liquor still. Another use, of course, for this kind of beverage is to put in medicines, and that is something that we've also talked about in another segment, that medicines were used by a lot of people because, quite frankly, they didn't have a grip on how to treat illnesses. So if you had anything that made you feel better, then you could use the alcohol in the medicine to boost a person's feelings. And so, again, people used alcohol as a remedy for any number of illnesses. It didn't usually last more than a couple hours, but nevertheless, it made people feel better.
Sun just went. Like you're looking at what's going on.
He went back and got this in. That's what he would take it down with, square it up like he wanted. That's where the foot is. Let me
Going out the last time. Then take it and prepare to go over into the bin. And you always want to try and get most of the center. You come here. Once you get in with your axe, raise it up. Then come back with the maul. Split this into another half with your hands. Continue to split that piece. And you want to get in here now with your hands. Pull this out. And you want to continue to split this out with your hands. And now you want to be a little bit more careful about pulling this piece out. You don't want to lose any of those splits at the top. And here we come up to what is not. And that's a little tough, we passed it. That knot will always be there. Continue to work this on down. Okay. Now, alright, now that's one stage there, so we have to go back. And with the pocket knife once again. Continue to dress these corners. Make sure there's no jagged edge. And now you want to be a little bit more careful about pulling this piece out. You don't want to lose any of those splits at the top. And here we come up. Come in here and work your way all the way around. Now these rims will give your basket good support up top. This is tough getting in there, but it will go.